Empire. Gaming is not a way, but the way of life.
Esports is a sport of the internet because gaming is universal, global, wholly online, it exists fully digitally. And crypto, for example, and everything that has come out of crypto is the currency of the internet or the transaction kind of ecosystem of the internet. So to us, they're just hand in hand. So we just see gaming will continue to be kind of the sport of this generation, the sport of the internet, the sport of the metaverse, whatever you want to call it.
That's Salz, co-founder and CEO of Rivalry, a platform where gaming and gambling are converging. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. This was one of my personal favorite conversations that I've had since starting this show some 250 episodes ago. I'm 49, cutting edge 49, but still largely the technologies that Salz and I talk about, and I can admit this, remain foreign concepts to the younger version of me. Rivalry wants to go next level in immersive engagement with gaming at the center and gambling as a key growth avenue. In between, we discussed life on and off a device, and it was really interesting. Our guest this week is Salz. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Rivalry, which is a global esports-focused sportsbook and media company. So let's take a look at sports, betting, gaming, esports, all in the metaverse. Hey, Steven, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Give me a little background on Rivalry. What's the company do?
Sure. Rivalry is a global sports book. We focus on esports, which is competitive gaming, but we offer everything on traditional sports. We have our own original, call it casino type product we built, which is, marble race meets Mario Kart in a cyberpunky kind of world, but very much just a global regulated sports book and a large kind of media entity as well. So we produce a ton of original content, 20 plus social media properties, 150, 160 brand partners. Rivalry is the most engaged monthly esports focused betting property globally. I think we're top 5 across all sports books in terms of monthly measured engagement on social and content. So yeah, very much like a meme, shitposty, ridiculous consumer brand with a focus on esports betting. Yeah.
That's an interesting bumper sticker or t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me your background here. How did you end up here? I read some of your bio, and you've kind of just been in gaming and in this world for a very long time and grew up with it. Can you kind of just give me some background of how you landed here? Yeah,
I think like a lot of people my age, I played a lot of video games when I was younger. So I played, early 2000s, you had Xbox Live that came out, I think it was like 2003, 2004. Played that. I played Rainbow Six on Xbox semi-competitively with my twin brother. Then we played a lot of World of Warcraft, RuneScape, EVE Online, like just kind of everything, but very, very addicted to video games. Our entire high school experience was spent on game servers, I'd say. We didn't have much of an in-person high school experience, but very addicted to games. And then professionally I went into capital markets. I worked in finance at an investment bank for about 4 to 5 years, but was really interested in what was happening in the gaming ecosystem. But now from both like an investment and business building perspective, as well as just like personal interest, continued to play games, Counter-Strike, all this kind of stuff. And then in the 2013, 2014, you had these massive in-game economies that were being spurred. So multi-billion-dollar real money, third-party economies around some of the biggest competitive games. So Counter-Strike and Dota 2 being 2 of the bigger ones for that. And I was active in that marketplace and trading items and buying and selling. It was like NFTs before NFTs. It was in-game aesthetics. So then I met the 2 guys behind one of the bigger ones that I was using, which they happen to be based in Toronto, which is where I'm based. And we got talking. I was looking to invest, and then we formed just a friendship and a partnership. And then late 2016, we said, hey, let's raise a bit of money for this marketplace, and maybe there's other stuff we can do together. So I left my finance job, went in with those guys. We identified sports betting as a product that this demographic, so under 30s that grew up on the internet, so basically that were looking to participate in that ecosystem now, which was just different than what the types of products their parents use, I guess you could say. It's kind of like what Robinhood was to Charles Schwab and all this kind of stuff in fintech. And it was comparable, so we thought let's build a great consumer experience and consumer brand for this demographic and just build a great kind of entertainment brand, and that was what was exciting for us. And kind of early 2017, we raised some money and then started down the path of doing that.
All right. Let me stay in betting with you for a moment then. Okay.
Sure.
How could you describe what the customer/fan experience is in how you describe interacting with betting as opposed to people on middle age, people my age, and how they interact with betting?
Yeah. So the standard experience of betting is hyper transactional. It's like going to the bank. And even if you go to sign up for these older school betting sites, you're met with like a medical form of KYC that's like asked of you. It's not a modern user experience. It's the same as signing up for Charles Schwab or Scotia iTrade in Canada versus like a Wealthsimple here or a Robinhood, which are like modern interfaces, modern user experiences for a younger consumer coming into these consumer experiences. Like it's a fundamentally different experience top to bottom. At the end of the day, you're still buying Apple stock on Robinhood, you're buying Apple stock on Charles Schwab, but anyone going through that experience will feel that these are like totally different products because it's just building modern consumer experiences that are based on the internet for global audiences. So that's like one big fundamental difference is just like the type of user experience that you have. And then the way that they engage specifically with sports betting is way less transactional. If you look at a mature sports bettor that are late 30s and up, they are trying to grind out the sports book for the win. They'll take really sharp odds. They're looking for bonuses and promotions, all this kind of stuff. It's not to say our users not trying to do that. It's just the volume is way less of that. And what they're really here to do is it's something that's additive to their experience of watching competitive gaming or watching esports. And there are many cases where they will bet on what is mathematically a huge underdog that is probably guaranteed to lose the money just because they want to be part of like the meme. They want to tweet at their favorite pro or their player with their bet slip, their rivalry bet slip that, hey, like I'm behind you, I'm supporting you. And what I compare it to or liken it to is like GameStop and AMC and what was happening with like meme stocks, a year or so ago, where people, if you look at what was happening in like the Reddit communities, which is the same as like the gaming communities and are the demographic we serve, everybody wanted to make money on GameStop. And listen, like I was a financial analyst, like I was an equity research analyst covering stocks for 5 years. Like in most of my clients were hedge funds. Like I really understood that game. I bought GameStop knowing full well that probably not going to make any money. It's idiotic, but why did I buy it? I bought it while a lot of other people bought it. Like you wanted to be part of the meme. Like there was like a movement that was happening, right? Like there was an entertainment experience that was now paired with an investing experience. We all wanted to make money, but if we didn't make money, the experience was also kind of worth it, like for the meme, to be honest. And it's the same as what's happening with like the renaissance in trading cards. If you look at what's happening in Pokemon cards and you look at what's happening in trading cards, which has had a huge renaissance as well over the last couple of years, and the value's gone up, it's not because all of a sudden people like rediscovered value in Pokemon cards. It's because opening up $100,000 worth of Pokemon cards on Instagram Live, Snapchat, or YouTube and garnering a huge amount of views and getting into that community, the clout of that experience has intrinsic value that whether or not you get a card that makes the investment worth it doesn't matter as much as it used to. So this is what's changing with consumer experiences. And we see, we talk to a lot of like kind of venture capitalists and people about this, is what used to be a transactional consumer experience, whether it's investing in trading cards, art, stocks, sports betting, etc., is turning now into, for better or for worse, is turning into like an entertainment experience first and a transactional investment experience second. So that's the way that we approach it. And that approach fundamentally means like the entire company has to be built differently. The entire product has to be built differently. So that's the huge difference.
So the motivations have changed.
Completely.
What was that noticeable to you in your young experience? Did you just not relate to the transactional nature of what was happening by people that were older than you? How did I guess what I'm asking is, how do you think this happened that we've had this kind of motivational shift?
Well, one, like attention spans have shifted a lot. So every successive generation has a smaller attention span than the prior one. So, when I grew up, I could sit and watch a 2.5, 3 hour movie. I didn't need to be on my phone or computer simultaneously doing that. Try and watch a 18-year-old, put them in front of a 2.5 hour movie and see if they're going to go on their phone once or not. Or watching sports and see if they're going to be on their phone and their laptop simultaneously and doing a bunch of other things at the same time. The attention spans have just shrunk. So as attention spans shrink, the kind of dopamine response that you're satisfied with the experience that you're having increases. Like it needs to fire more frequently for you to kind of enjoy what you're doing. And that, again, for better or for worse, this is just what's been happening over the last 150 years. People in the early 20s could sit around a radio where you would literally go to your neighbor's house to sit around the radio and listen to it because your neighbor had the radio, you didn't have the radio. And then the next generation, you can find news clippings and articles of this. It's like I've looked back this far. the 40s and 50s, you had like tube television and color television. But again, it was like one or two people in the neighborhood that had it, and you would go to their house to watch. But the kids that grew up on that television, which was one or two channels, couldn't comprehend how their parents could sit around a radio and be interested. And their parents that grew up in the 20s thought their kids were insane. And then you had cable television, right? And it was like, okay, well now, rather than like the 20 or 30 channels I got to look at the TV guide on, I got like the military channel, the tech channel. And that generation, which is like kind of my generation, I look back at my parents who looked at TV guides and like, that's totally insane. And you had the YouTube generation where you can find the most nuanced, niche experience thing that you're looking for. And you look back at the cable generation, you're like, you guys are nuts that you actually were entertained by this stuff. So it just goes on and on and on. And I think that's just been like the nature of content and the nature of entertainment. And sports betting has just not evolved with that in the last 20 years.
I got to tell you, though, as someone who loves great television, when I watch YouTube, I go, I don't know how you people are entertained by that. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like that will forever be the case where every successive generation is, eventually the Gen Zs are going to be parents. They're going to look at their kids and think their kids are insane. When we look at Gen Z and think they're nuts. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, let me ask you this. I know you're more involved in esports and betting and gaming and all of that, but I do wonder just what your perspective is, especially in this line of thought where getting people to sit down and watch a movie, let alone a game, for 2.5, 3 hours. Where do you kind of see the role for traditional sports and their content offerings in this new world that is in the metaverse?
Yeah, like traditional sports viewership among a younger demographic has been declining pretty consistently for a long time. So in many places in the world, competitive gaming or esports for under 25 is more viewed than the most popular traditional sport in the market. And that's only going to continue. The reason for that is if you look at the average esport, the number of data points on the screen averages between 50 to 60. So go on Twitch and watch any competitive esport. There is a ton of shit coming in your face constantly. Like, first of all, the pacing and speed of the game is insane relative to like baseball. So that's why, baseball fans on average are, I think, 62, 63. The average esports fan is 21, 22. There's a whole like joke where for every baseball fan that dies, 2 esports fans are born, but that's kind of true. So if you look at what's happening, if you watch a typical esport, the pacing of it and the rate of it is so ridiculously fast. And there's about 50 to 60 data points on the screen, whereas every individual player, it's mostly 5 versus 5 games. Every individual player has a little icon and a little kind of bar showing like their health, their utility, what items they have, weapons they have, if they've used it, if they've not, the time, like the little mini map in the corner. Everyone's moving around, like the abilities or special abilities that have been used or not used. It's just infinitely more entertaining and engaging for someone that needs that level of engagement. So our expectation is that traditional sports is going to, again, like from a generational shift, it will just decline in interest and decline in viewership. And it already has been happening for a very long time. So we just expect that to continue. Specific to the metaverse, gaming is just going to be, again, like the feature content and the feature sport of the metaverse. And I think we also think about the metaverse in a very different way than maybe the media talks about it. And
yeah.
I think it's, as do I think most people who grew up playing games that's what's been there's a side tangent, but what's been very odd about all this metaverse stuff is anyone that grew up playing massively multiplayer role-playing games or just video games in general that's under the age of 25 does not identify with the metaverse that you see in the media. It makes absolutely no sense to them, myself included. So I grew up playing World of Warcraft for 5 years, which was to me a very deep open world with lots of people that I hung out with. I played Second Life, I played EVE Online, I played EverQuest, like all these games. And the metaverse games that exist out there or the worlds that exist out there, including what's coming out of Meta or Facebook, is of lower quality and less depth than the stuff that I played 15 years ago. And I think everyone feels the same way about it. So we don't look at the metaverse as like a video game like Ready Player One universe. That doesn't make any sense, to be honest. The metaverse for us, and I've now heard this from a lot of people, and this is now where I think it's becoming a more sophisticated insight into what it actually is. The metaverse is just when the percentage of your time spent per day looking at a screen is greater than not looking at a screen. To us, that's the metaverse. And like if you are of the Gen Z, let's say, demographic, that's already the case for you. So to us, that's the metaverse. So when digital experiences take over your physical experiences, then the way that you value your time and the way that you value your goods changes. So that's like, I've never understood why people are so confused, why people are going to spend, a couple $100 or $1,000 on in-game skins or aesthetics for their items or their character or whatever that may be. But if you're spending more of your time there or more of your time digitally than you are physically, what's the difference between me buying like, an Hermes tie if I'm going into the office every day versus like a $300
100%. Yeah, 100%.
sneakers for my character online? Like it's the same thing, right? So
you're buying
that's
things of value for
metaverse.
your life, right? And people's tastes change through time. So those tangible items that you're talking about that were important to some people, well, if your life is spent digitally, then these items are going to be, I agree with you. It's just a different way of thinking about it. Yeah.
What's the Rolex for your digital life? Like that's why people spend money on stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like certain NFTs are the Rolex Flex equivalent for online. But if we're all starting to spend more time online than physically, then why wouldn't you invest in that?
Yeah.
If that's the thing that appeals to you. So it all makes total sense to us. So in that world, we've been saying this for like 5-6 years. Esports is the sport of the internet because gaming is universal, global, wholly online. It exists totally digitally. And crypto, for example, and everything that has come out of crypto is the currency of the internet or the transaction kind of ecosystem of the internet. So to us, they're just hand in hand. So we just see gaming will continue to be kind of the sport of this generation, the sport of the internet, the sport of the metaverse, whatever you want to call it. And as more people's time is spent digitally, then the aggregate amount of viewership and interest in esports will naturally only continue to go up as it has been for a very long time.
Guys, if you're looking for that extra confidence when it's time to have a little bit of fun, let me tell you about BlueChew.com. Blue Chew is a unique online service. It delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but it comes in chewable form and it's at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew's tablets will help you combat all forms of ED. Plus, it's an online prescription service. No visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, no waiting in line at the pharmacy, and it ships right to your door in a discreet package. The process is really simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you are approved, you'll receive your prescription within days, and the best part, all done online. Blue Chew's licensed medical providers are going to work with you to find the right ingredient and the strength for your personal subscription. Plus, their tablets are made in the United States. They prepare, they ship direct, and it's so much cheaper than going through a pharmacy. And here's a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code FUTURE, F-U-T-R, at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code FUTURE, F-U-T-R, to receive your first month free. And we thank Blue Chew for being a sponsor of this show. There could be two things happening at once. I wonder if you agree with this, because you had mentioned Robinhood earlier. And for me growing up, the barrier for entry and even understanding how to be involved in the stock market was extraordinarily high. Robinhood simplified that process for everybody, including myself for that matter, but it simplified it and made the barrier for entry and understanding of it, even if it is rudimentary, it made it there for you so that you could kind of get in if you wanted to. I think what you're talking about with the metaverse for people my age that didn't grow up in your generation is they're baby stepping us into this. And you're looking at it going, why are you baby stepping this? We've already lived it, but there's a generational gap here, I think, on both sides of it. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. That's fair. I think the older generation still, though, thinks it's like totally insane. Like they can't comprehend Bored Apes and all this kind of stuff that's been coming out of the space, right? Because it's totally incomprehensible. But to be fair, you can find documentaries. There's a 60-minute documentary from the mid-2000s of people that were making full-time livings in Second Life as real estate agents. And I remember I was like 14, 15. I was 14 or 15 years old when the stuff came out. I was watching this on YouTube. I was playing Second Life at the time, and I thought it was a little crazy even for me then, but I was in the ecosystem experience and knew it. But there are people now that are in their mid-30s to late 30s that when they were teenagers, people were doing this stuff, and it seems that they still can't, 15 years later, they still aren't able to wrap their head around it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I think the onboarding funnel is there, but also ultimately it doesn't matter as much when 40% of the global population is under the age of 30. It's the largest generational cohort in history.
Yeah.
And that's just an inevitable tidal wave. And whether or not the older demographic or generation is interested coming into it or not, it will still be successful and it will still be what's going to happen. So,
okay. Give me your sense of games and esports, where it is right now, where you think it's going, and what genres do you think will be popular as we head into the future?
The most popular games right now are all PC games. So console is very popular in North America, but I think people that live in North America that will have like a PlayStation or Xbox don't realize this is a bit of a North American and call it European phenomenon. Most places in the world, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Asia, most people can't afford and most homes don't have consoles, and therefore like the competitive ecosystem and the volume of players is not really that developed there. So we expect that to continue to be the case as well. PCs is a little more affordable, but many go to PC bangs or PC centers. That's like a huge part of culture. So that's why PC's been so big. So right now the three biggest games are League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and Dota. They're all 5 versus 5 PC games. League of Legends and Dota are like 5 versus 5 strategy games, and Counter-Strike is a 5 versus 5 PC shooting game. These have been popular. Counter-Strike's been a professional esport for 20 years. League of Legends has been popular for over a decade, as has Dota. The big shift that we're really seeing right now is there's always kind of different PC games coming in and out. There's a new one called Valorant. Valorant is a 5 versus 5 shooting game from the same publisher as League of Legends. This is becoming very popular. We expect this to be a top 3, top 5 esport soon. And then the other thing that we're very bullish on is mobile esports, which will sound even probably crazier to I think some people of an older demo. But in most places in the world, they don't have PCs, they don't have consoles, and they also can't afford, or there's no PC center ecosystem, but everyone has a mobile phone. So mobile esports in Southeast Asia and Latin America is massive. People don't, here people can't appreciate it, but pre-COVID, I can send you videos and stuff. People are filling stadiums of 10, 15, 20,000 people in India, Indonesia, elsewhere, watching 5 versus 5 mobile competitive gaming. Massive, like $1 million prize pools of people playing mobile competitive games. So we think mobile is like a huge part of the future of esports, and it will also start to come to North America and Europe, where you have a game called Free Fire, which is very popular in Latin America. Free Fire also is owned by a public company, so they report the numbers. Free Fire last year was doing 150 million monthly active players. 150 million monthly active players. There's a game called Battlegrounds Mobile India. It's a very popular India battle royale. When it was released, it had 50 million downloads in the first month.
Wow.
So these are just numbers that are like incomprehensible to people, but like 150 million monthly active players is it's like 4 times the population of Canada. So it's hard for people to wrap their heads around these numbers, but this is what's happening. That is, again, to us is like this inevitable tidal wave that is going to hit the shores very soon to, let's say, North America.
I'm going to go back to traditional sports just for a moment, because we do focus a lot here on this show about it. So taking all of this in mind and where your expertise is and what you're seeing happening and the explosion of engagement, fully, if leagues, athletes, brands, teams want to be involved and better engaged in this world, what would you tell them to do to try to extend their brands into this modern level of engagement?
So you have seen a lot of traditional sports teams come into, frankly, like some of the biggest investors in gaming and esports have been traditional sports teams, specifically for the reason that you just mentioned, which is to kind of average down the viewer or the fan of their club or whatever it may be. So in Europe, there's League of Legends franchises. So there's actually franchise teams, the same as you have elsewhere. You pay a franchise fee. Many of the franchises in Europe and also in South America are owned by the football clubs, which makes sense because they're if you're a Brazilian, you're a fan of League of Legends, but you're also definitely still a fan of soccer or football there, right? So, Flamengo and all the bigger clubs there, they also are the biggest League of Legends teams. Like, they own the franchises. So they're already kind of doing it, and they understand how to connect those audiences. So I think that's already been a big step. And some of the bigger investors in North America in esports have been Major League Baseball teams and franchises and owners, because MLB fans are, on average, the oldest of all the traditional sports. So the first actually to dip their toe in esports and put real money at work were MLB franchises and MLB owners, which makes sense. So I think it's a bit silly to try to convert your 40, 50, 60-year-old baseball or hockey fan to and expect them to become a gaming or esports fan. That doesn't make sense. But trying to take your franchise and your brand equity and then bring it into gaming and esports ownership, to me, makes sense. So like I would look at it more as like adding to your portfolio rather than trying to convert your fans. Like it just frustrates them, because we did see that a little bit where you have like NFL teams and MLB teams trying to convert their fans to esports fans. And to me, that's just like, I don't know why you would force that. I think it's a bit of a lost cause. But if you've got the capital and you have the franchise value and you have the ecosystem and you've got the resources also, you can really massively support an esports franchise and a competitive ecosystem, and you can start to introduce your brand equity there. And even if you're introducing it to a new audience, that's fine. At least you're going to keep it alive for the next couple generations, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really the way to look at it from our perspective.
Yeah. Okay. And as this is growing, outside of those major name games that you've discussed, where do you see growth trajectory? In what ways? In what ways will you see financial boon in the metaverse?
The examples we've used in the past would be the way that brands are starting to engage. I'd say it's more using like digital ecosystems to monetize your core product and your core experience. I'll give you a perfect example. Gucci released a handbag in Roblox. So people as well think of Roblox as like the game that their kids play. They don't realize that the average age of someone in Roblox is in their late teens now. And the monthly active player base of Roblox is absolutely enormous, and it's a great place to deploy your brand. So Gucci released their handbags digitally in Roblox, and they were purchased and sold for more than the real version of the physical handbag costs. So to us,
to 18-year-olds, how did that even happen?
Well, there's people in their 20s and 30s that are playing Roblox.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think people don't realize this is happening. And then you also saw Nike acquired, I think it's RZ something. It's like RZKT or something. But Nike acquired a company that digitizes sneakers, and they acquired that business, and they've created a whole Nike digital company out of the kind of the sneakers team, like the SNKRS team, which is the one that does all like the sneakerhead stuff at Nike's. There's a whole digital team being built now, and they're digitizing all their goods to put them in the metaverse, or basically just to digitize kind of all their IP into online world. And the way that makes sense is what you even saw in Fortnite, where Fortnite was probably early in this, where go back to 2018 and 19 when Fortnite was kind of the hottest thing that was going on culturally at the time.
Right.
And you had the NFL. This is where you're not connecting to sports. You had the NFL doing a partnership with Fortnite, where Tom Brady and all the very popular players and their jerseys were available for purchase as skins in Fortnite, and that did like extremely, unbelievably well. So I think that's what it's about. It's just transporting more of your IP digitally and trying to figure out how to manifest it digitally as a way to both monetize in that ecosystem, but also connect it to the physical good and have people interested in what's happening there as well. So that's the way that we see the metaverse monetizing. Is just really just like the next platform to sell your goods. Like, nobody should be surprised if Rolex eventually gets around to creating digital Rolexes that are verifiably from that company. And I would not be surprised to see major players in gaming and esports want to own those products for their digital characters, and then very likely their identity gets attached and associated to it, and then nobody should be surprised and then see them buy the real watch. So like, this is all going to happen, is like, how do you create that continuous thread of consumer experience into a digital world? And the metaverse now as a theme is starting to force that. It's been happening for years, but now the metaverse has like gotten a term. So now it's starting to force it on brands, and everyone's starting to come up with different ways to do it, where Adidas has this huge activation, Nike and everybody, right? So I think that's all it is like, how do you create a brand thread and continuity and consumer experience story to the internet and to the physical good that people are also buying? It's just making those two things connected.
It's really fascinating. Steven Salz is the co-founder and the CEO of Rivalry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
On the next Future Sport podcast, how are advertisers performing in the major real-life events in the modern consumption era?
Historically was done, pen, paper, stopwatch, and maybe some peers, going through figuring out the number. I think now the opportunity is you can measure that faster, you can measure that more granularly, you can measure that more comprehensively, and ultimately more consistently.
That's Dan Kalpin, president at Hive AI, which is measuring the impact of advertisement in every way at major events like the Final Four. He and Kyle Foltz from Elevate Sports Ventures discuss their reporting of how brands are benefiting and maybe missing opportunity. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.